The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the debate about the Prime Minister's statement is an opportunity to, I suppose, listen and learn, if you don't have anything else to do, to the opposition. And we've learnt one or two things. I think the first is that when Labor talks about the Kiwi dream, they're dreaming of 2005 to 2008. I think that's now pretty clear. We've been assailed for the last 10 days of the last few days of the House session with the best thinking from Grant Robertson's and Andrew Little's finest hour, which was low debt levels in 2008 and interest-free student loans in 2005. And there's nothing we've heard that indicates their thinking has grown up from that point. In fact, their best efforts then came straight out of their days as student union leaders, like most of the front two rows of the Labor Party. So Labor's dream is Helen Clark as Prime Minister, handing out more goodies to students and claiming they got government debt down. Well, government debt was low then. Of course, other things weren't. Interest rates were 10%. Government spending had grown by 50% in the previous 5 years. And that's another thing we've learnt from this debate is Labor intend to do it all again if they become the government. The same things. You've just got to look through the list of extravagant spending promises to see that. We've also learnt something else, though. The centre of gravity for critics of the government is now the thuggish left. That's right. Because of the increasing irrelevance of Labor and the Greens, mired in their dreams of 10 years ago, the thuggish left is taking the stage. And in fact, increasingly, the incoherent people who throw things are dragging the Greens and the Labor to the left. The most obvious example we're familiar with is Labor's position on the TPP, a once moderate, market-minded social democrat party that's now opposed to free trade, or at least I think we're allowed to sell to other people, but they're not allowed to sell to us. Because he said he's going to renegotiate some of it. And I think that's the bit. We'll keep the bit where we can sell to other people, but we'll negotiate out the bit that says they can sell to us. Or maybe it's the other way round. I just can't remember. But the Parliament will deliver the Labor Party a chance to look decisive. And that is the TPP legislation, which will turn up here, and they will have to vote one way or the other. They can't, as I once saw a member do, stand in the middle between the ayes and the noes lobby and hope that the bells went so they didn't have to vote. And I think that's where we will see Andrew Little on the day. And Mr Speaker, the other example is the Greens. The speech from Mr Hughes was the nastiest personal attacks I've heard in this Parliament in 25 years. Shameful. From a member and a party who said they wouldn't do that sort of thing. Mr Speaker, they are becoming increasingly preoccupied by how to look more angry than the thuggish left who throw things. That's what they're competing for. And the votes are moving round, no doubt, among Labor and the Greens, depending on who appeals most to the angry, incoherent, dumbed-down left, Mr Speaker. And in the meantime, as the Prime Minister outlined in his statement, the government continues to deal with the challenge of underpinning moderate growth in this economy while there is an ongoing level of global uncertainty. It's hard to know whether it's more than it used to be. There's a different set of preoccupations now, which the opposition say mean recession, global recession is coming. But whether there's more or less of it, we've continued to focus on ensuring that the structure of this economy is resilient, on ensuring that it provides opportunity. And I just want to actually point out something I thought the opposition might have pointed out today. The minimum wage went up. Is going to go up. It hasn't gone up. It'll go on the 1st of April. At the same time as beneficiary families with children will get the first increase in their benefits above CPI in over 40 years, on the same day. But the minimum wage has, since this government since National became the government, the National-led government came in, the minimum wage has gone up 27%. Inflation has gone up 11%. The minimum wage has gone up 27%, inflation has gone up 11%. We now have the smallest gap in the developed world between the minimum wage and the average wage. And one can argue, some would actually, that it's probably a bit too close. So, Mr. Speaker, the fruits of consistent, moderate growth are being shared out across New Zealand. The average wage itself, of course, in the last 12 months has just gone up over 3%. In a year when inflation was 0.1%. There can't be too many more relevant measures for New Zealand households than real increases in their benefits, if they've got families, got children, in the minimum wage and in the average wage. Consistent, real increases in the value of those incomes. And so what most of Mr. Hughes said about that was simply wrong. I don't mind disagreeing with people, but willful ignorance on the part of the Greens about what's happening in our environment, in our economy. And, you'd think you might expect a bit of graciousness about the Kermadex Park. You might have. The largest protected piece of ocean on the planet, about which they're meant to be so preoccupied. But they spend so much time creating CO2 emissions flying round the planet that they haven't even caught up with the fact that the Kermadex Reserve has been created. They don't have to acknowledge the national government, because we know they don't, because they become so mean-minded. They just need to acknowledge the presence of the reserve, about which so many people are so happy. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll continue with the economic program the Prime Minister outlined, and it includes some real challenges. And it is fantastic to be part of a team that has the energy and the focus to get into the hardest issues this economy now has to address: fresh water, and how we have intensive agricultural production and improve the quality of our water, because that's what we're going to be able to achieve. The regulation of our housing market, New Zealand's biggest asset class. Just look at the number of people who turn up to meetings in Auckland about it. That tells you how relevant our concerns are and their concerns are to this government, because we need to ensure that our housing market doesn't create macro imbalances, higher interest rates than we needed, unfairness, locking people out of the market, and very big fiscal costs, the $2 billion a year we spend subsidising rentals in the housing market. Mr. Speaker, that's just two of the issues. There's any number of others before this Parliament which will show real progress this year. The Te Tura Whenua Māori Act, when that gets here before too long, 100-year wait for significant reform that will allow the better use of much Māori land. Is it politically high profile? Not particularly. Does it matter? Absolutely, along with the other, those other complicated issues, and they're all a bit controversial. They're all a bit challenging. They all need a lot of consultation and explanation, and the Prime Minister is leading a government that has every intention of boring into those issues, and that's before we get to the hardcore, difficult social issues where most of our government spending goes. And if anything sums up the Labor Party's lack of relevance, it's that its proposition about free whatever it was for students shows no understanding of anything that's going on in the analysis of social policy these days anywhere in the developed world. It's straight out of the 1970s. So I was wrong. I thought the Kiwi dream was 2008, but actually now that they're getting back to Norman Kirk,
sorry to interrupt,
it's 1972.
This time